Thank you for joining us, everyone, for another episode of Creatives Chat, featuring Chris James. Join us as we chat about who knows what. Click the subscribe button to be notified of future episodes and join our show shall begin now. Streaming from Retro Earth Studio and brought to you by wearehistorically.com. Conscious Human Apparel, and
learn to play jazz piano like a pro, by a pro, with Jazz Piano Pro Essentials at jazzpianopro.com.
Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Creatives Chat. I'm Rusty.
I'm Peter.
And Peter, tell everyone who we have on our show today.
Oh, Rusty, I am incredibly excited. Our guest is a self-taught holistic wellness coach and creator of the wellness brand, A Healthy Alternative, with over 140,000 followers all over the globe. He teaches others how to heal using the body's natural resources and is a believer that water fasting should be the epicenter of one's wellness journey. Through personal experimentation and documentation, he shows others how to perform fasting safely. And honestly, he's one of my biggest inspirations for water fasting itself. He's the epitome of the application of knowledge as power. We have Chris James.
All right, everybody, let's meet Chris.
Oh, man. And thank you so much, Chris, for coming on the show. Yo, I'm incredibly excited to talk to you today, but how are you doing?
I'm very well. Every day's a good day.
Facts. Now, just for the listeners, I know a lot of them already know about my, water fasting journey, which started a little more than 3 years ago. And I'm going to be completely real with you. Your channel was the one that kind of was like the final tipping point where I was like, yeah, I got to do this for real. Like, let's go. So it's an honor to actually interview, man.
Well, that's exciting, man. It's always interesting to hear people say that, like, your channel is the one that pushed me over. You're the reason why I tried it. And yeah, that's what's up.
Well, I mean, from like the spiritual angle, I got into a lot of like the mysticism aspect of it and all the different unfoldments that can arise from it. But just seeing your journey itself and your transformation was just one of those, oh, this is legit. Like, this is legit. So just for our listeners, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself and more importantly, about your channel and your brand, Healthy Alternative?
Well, so I'm 36. I'm actually working on like removing myself from a number. So I have to think about like how old I am, because I would like to focus more on how old I feel and, what's the health of my body and where am I at there. But anyway, I started my health journey about 7 years ago. And basically what ended up happening was I was going through a process where my body was starting to like break down and shut down on me. I was dealing with memory loss, fatigue. I was construction worker at the time, and I was like getting tired at lunchtime. My hair was thinning. And not only was I having all these issues, I was looking at the guys around me. I mean, I was an electrician, but like just looking at construction guys, by the time they're 50, they're all worn out and it's, they're falling apart. And I started questioning myself and I'm just like, man, like, does it have to be this way? Like, is this my future? And I literally said, no, like it's not going to be me. So I started researching and having discussions with guys at work about, like when I look at the Bible, right? The Bible has all these characters that were able to live for, 300, 400, right, 1,000 years. Yeah. Then you look outside of the Bible and you look at ancient cultures who had rulers who were in place for 1,000+ years. And I'm like, okay, either something is extremely wrong with us now, or like I'm misinterpreting this information. So I dived deeper into it. And what I started to learn is something's extremely wrong with us right now. And so I started learning about ways to, heal the body naturally, what the body is capable of. And it was really fun, like going down that rabbit hole and seeing everything that we are kind of born with, all of the ability we're born with. I mean, I'm at the tip of the iceberg still. But through that journey, I began my own process of experimentation. And what really birthed a healthy alternative was, um, so I was dealing with an infection that I had like for 10 years. It was crazy. Went to the doctors, took all the medication, nothing worked. And I was literally leaving the doctor's office the last time that I saw him. He was like, yo, it might be dietary. And it was so funny because at that time I was studying Dr. Sebi and herbs and alkaline foods. And it was resonating with me that my issue might be what I was eating. Yeah. And so when he said that, it solidified it for me. So at a parallel time, my brother was also dealing with diabetes. His girlfriend had finally convinced him to go to the doctor. You know, men are really stubborn about going to the doctor. And they were like, yo, you're pre-diabetic. The writing was on the wall because my brother was what they call a symptomatic pre-diabetic. So he had impotency, he had, sleep apnea, he had tendinitis and high blood pressure and just all these different signs that something was really, really wrong. And so I was just like, yo, let's try something different. Let's try something radical or whatever. And, really helped me for my own personal journey to have him right there beside me. So I jumped out. The first thing I did a 13-day water fast.
What?
And that was the first thing.
Right into it.
Because I was all into the historical text and stuff. And I'm looking at all these people, doing these long fasts. And I'm like, I want to achieve that. And so after doing my first fast and seeing all of the amazing benefits, and I'm sure we'll dive more into it, I decided that this information had to be shared with the world. And my brother, who was pre-diabetic at the time, after about 6 weeks of a regimen that we developed for him, all his diabetic conditions were gone. He had lost 50 pounds. We knew for a fact that he was no longer diabetic. And I said, yo, John, we have to share this with the world. So I literally created a YouTube channel. It was actually my second YouTube channel. And I named it A Healthy Alternative because my thought process was, we need a healthy alternative to modern medicine, period. Instead of going to modern medicine for healing and preventative care and dietary strategy, whatever type of treatment you're interested in, we need a healthy alternative, because I knew that treatment is not healing.
Facts.
And so the brand was born, and now it's crazy.
Exactly, though. Well, I think that's just the most fascinating point right there, though, is reawakening to the human potential. And I find that that's always one of those fascinating attributes of our history, is they've been telling us these methods in all the different cultures and religions for a long, long time now, that we are amazing healers, and it starts within ourselves. So what were some of the kind of like eye-opening things for you that you observed in like the first 13-day water fast, which I got to give it to you, that's pretty savage. Like just going to ham with 13 days straight off the bat.
Straight off the bat. I actually, it's funny, before I kind of get into the benefits and things, my goal was actually 40 days. I was like, I'm gonna do the 40 days, the Jesus thing. I'm gonna do the 40 days. If he could do it, I could do it. And so I fell short of my goal. I was actually really disappointed in myself. But the benefits were crazy. So one thing that I did when I started my journey is I had a journal, and I don't know really why, because I'm not a writer, but I decided to start, jotting down things that I experienced. So the first thing that I noticed was the first full 24 hours that I fasted, I lost like 3 or 4 pounds. That was like the first. I was like, whoa, that's weird. After 2 days, I noticed that irritation that I had been dealing with for the past 10 years completely subsided. Wow. So after 2 days of fasting, I was sold. I'm like, okay, this is it. You know what I mean? On day 4-ish, 5-ish, something euphoric happened. Yeah. So I woke up And what I noticed was my energy might get like really low at night, but when I would wake up, I'd be really refreshed. So I woke up this day and I remember having thoughts of wellness. Like it was just like, okay, I don't want to drink anymore. I want to go to the gym right now. Also, I felt like I hadn't been eating for 5 days. So I felt like I could actually continue going on like that forever. Like, imagine not eating for 5 days and getting to a point where you feel so good that you were like, I don't even need food.
Right.
So I slipped into what I call the Goldilocks zone, where you feel light. Your cognitive function is firing. You have all these thoughts of wellness and well-being. And then I started to become more in tune with nature on a completely different level than I had ever imagined before. I started to become aware of ants and birds, and you know what I'm saying? Like, I actually started to develop a care for animals, small creatures like ants and flies, right? And it was so crazy because after I changed my energy around insects, because typically if there's an insect in my house, I'm either going to kill it or, you know what I mean? I don't want it there. It's annoying me. Bugs started coming to me. Like, there was an ant, and I kid you not, there was a specific ant that was in my room for weeks. He would not leave. And when I very first saw him, you know, my first thought was, let me put him outside. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so I put the ant outside on my patio. And then the next day I see another ant. And I'm like, okay, I must just have, must be a whole bunch of ants. But the way I knew it was the same ant is because one day I woke up and I rolled on him and it kind of jacked his tail up or whatever it's called. And I was devastated. So, I put him outside or whatever. And sure enough, he just kept coming back. But, I kept having experiences like that. I got a picture of this bee that came and sat with me one day at work. So I did my 13-day fast. But my mind had already been renewed and changed by the experience. I was sitting at lunch eating my food, and this bee literally just lands right on my hand and was just chilling. I was like, what is going on? So, those are just some of the initial things that I noticed. The list really, really goes on, and I could get into, what my brother experienced, which was even more extreme than I did.
Yeah, well, I think before we dive into that, it's interesting to see the spiritual shift that happened. I think one of the biggest things in terms of just like the cognitive awakening is people forget how much energy you spend processing and digesting food. And when that goes to the brain, I know for myself personally, that 4 to 5 day Goldilocks zone, I get into like that superhuman mode where it's just like, and it's funny because when you talk about it now, it's funny how the first things flash back. Like with my first fast, when I got to that point, colors and smells and things were just so vibrant, and that never went away. It's just this different like technicolor vision, just like I'm so enamored with life. But that connection with nature is really profound, because I think that's an overlap for everyone that goes through that process of really breaking an old conditioning, going beyond and entering into that superhuman level. And that's really what I akin the water fasting experiences is, because again, it shows the capacity that like our vehicle can heal from so much. So now let's tap in with your brother's stuff. Like, what was some of those happenings?
So, like I said, my brother was diabetic, but he was morbidly obese. So he was a vet. He's a veteran, and being in the military just destroyed his body. He had so many issues, sleep apnea, erectile dysfunction. My brother's younger than I am. So at the time, oh wow, he might have was like 28 years old. This weird tendon issue in his forearms where they would just get intensely painful. He had allergies. My brother's allergies were so bad that, like, during the summertime, so we're in Texas, and for whatever reason, the pollen is just weird out here. he would sit in his room with a hot rag on his face, just writhing in agony, like for the whole day. I felt bad for him, you know?
It's nuts.
And also he was dealing with a depression as well, which I was too. I think a lot of people are depressed and they don't know it. And I think we can attribute it to oftentimes the chemical imbalance and the hormonal imbalance, which is, I think people don't look at that. We look at depression from this whole mental thing, like, get your mind right. But it's like, well, there's a chemical component as well. So we put him on a regimen. We call it the 5-2. And as far as I know, we started that, right? So if you ever hear anybody talk about the 5-2, fasting for 5 days, eating for 2 days, that's what we developed for him. And he did it for, I think he actually did he started with a 10-day fast, and then he switched to the 5-2, and he did it for about 2 months. Wow. But after 6 weeks, like I mentioned earlier, he had lost 50 pounds in 6 weeks. Yeah. All of his diabetic conditions were gone. Sexual performance was back, and we knew we had struck gold. So that's just one of my brothers, one of the stories that we have. But fortunately, I've been able to inspire 4 people in my immediate family, 4 family members who have kind of taken this journey with me. And my brother Steven's journey is even crazier. Like he started off at nearly 400 pounds. I think he was 375. He might have got to 400 at his biggest, but when I started working with him, he was about 375. I actually have his first videos on YouTube. You could see me interviewing him at I think he was at 360, 355 at that time, because he'd already done some things. Yeah. And he just is a completely different person. His energy was super low vibrating. So that was another thing, right? The depression, low vibrating energy, low self-concept. Like he was teeter-tottering on that ledge of like breaking, like having a mental breakdown. Yeah. And he had some really crazy things happen. So my brother Steve was dealing with a toe fungus that he had since we were children. So it was like something he always had. And what I started to learn was that fungus was actually a result of a low functioning liver. Yeah. Through fasting and everything, he was able to actually clear his toes up. So now the fungus is completely gone. And his fungus, like it was just black. His feet were black. His toenails just dry. It looked bad, man. It looked really bad. Yeah, I don't know how much more you want. Like I could keep going. He ended up losing 142 pounds over the span of about a year, a couple months, maybe a year, 3 months or so. But he lost his first 90 pounds in like 2.5 months. It was insane. Right. And they did all of this, right? So I actually ended up losing 90 pounds total. But I was actually under the weight that I wanted to be. So I gained back about 20 pounds or so. But John and Steve, they had lost over 100 pounds, no loose skin.
Right. That's the fascinating stuff right there, is the body's efficiency just to reel it all in.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So in terms of that 5-2, is that what you would call like stacking fast versus like a long-term, like huge duration of a fast?
Yeah, that's something you could certainly use in a stacking method. Stacking is maybe a little bit more unique than that, where it's essentially you can take a combination of different fasting methods or like a period of time, and you're pretty much stacking. So like you could do alternate day fasting, which would kind of be like stacking. You could also do a 14-2, which is 14 days of fasting with a 2-day break. And so actually during my brother's when he very first did his fasting journey, and this is how he lost so much in such a short period of time, he would do like 14 days at a time. And people always ask me, well, Chris, how much time do you need in between the fast? And I'm like, I mean, 1 day, 2 days at the most. Like, you don't really need any time in between. It's really more mental than anything.
Yeah.
But what we found was that, okay, so after 2 weeks of fasting, your body shifts gears and it really starts to shrink, tighten. You're going to see the most inches kind of come off.
Yeah.
Steve probably reported at one time he was losing like 4 or 5 inches a week,
Wow.
just insane amount of inches. And so what we did was that would become it would kind of like, it wouldn't motivate him because he's doing these really long fasts. They want to see the scale move every single day. So after 2 weeks, I would say, okay, instead of going through your week, which we call it a fasting shrink week, instead of, seeing that happen, eat for 2 days and then go back into fasting. And what it would do is it would keep the scale constantly moving down. So for those who are like completely driven by like the scale, you can actually kind of manipulate your fast in a way so that you can always see the scale keep going down. Like, it'll bump up a little bit when you actually eat. And it really depends on what you eat, how much weight you see. But you'll as soon as you start fasting, and you'll see the weight go back. So you won't have that fasting shrink week. But yeah.
That's wild stuff. Now, in terms of just your own personal experience, is it just straight water fasting, or have you experimented with dry fasting at all? And kind of like, what's your methodology behind that and your approach?
Yeah, so dry fasting, I studied dry fasting much longer than I did water. I waited to do a dry fast much longer than I waited to do a water fast. The reason why is because when I was studying dry fasting, I did find stories where people hurt themselves. And with water fasting, I never really saw that. So it didn't really make me nervous. But with dry fasting, I saw these weird stories. And so I was just like, I'm going to hold off on it for a little while. After a year or so of doing fasting, might have been a year and a half, water fasting, I decided, let me dabble in some dry. The brand is growing, let's figure this thing out. It was the most amazing experience because when you do water fasting, you just assume fasting comes with a certain amount of, detox symptoms, and there's mental barriers and obstacles that you have to overcome, hunger pangs. There's just, you understand what you get with water fasting. Yeah. Dry fasting flipped it all on its head. It was a completely different experience. So number one, dry fasting, and you may have heard this before, is nearly 3 times as potent as water fasting. Some people use the word effective. It's kind of hard. You got to be careful with the words because it's hard to really quantify it. But it's when you just look at weight loss, it's about 2-ish, 3-ish times more effective than water fasting. So that was the first thing I noticed. The second thing that I noticed was that I didn't get hungry on a dry fast. Like, I didn't feel hunger pangs at all the entire time. So my first dry fast I did was 6 days. Wow. When I hit the ground, I like to hit it running.
But you should have been dead. Everything's told me you should have been dead. You went more than 3 days.
Right. It's 3 minutes without oxygen, 3 days without food or water, and then 3 weeks without food or something. I don't know. It's 3-3-3, whatever it is.
Yeah, some malarkey.
I completely shattered that. And so I noticed that the most that I craved was just water. But the interesting thing about dry fasting, you would think that your mouth is going to be dry. Like, you think, I'm dry fasting, I'm going to be thirsty. No, when you properly hydrate before you do your dry fast, the body does a very good job of keeping your mouth moist. As a matter of fact, when I dry fast, my mouth is more moist than it is when I'm drinking water. So I don't have to worry about like dry throat and things of that nature. And that could be because that I properly prepare. And, we'll talk here in a second about how to prepare for a dry fast. But so the weight loss is amplified. The hunger pangs are pretty much non-existent. The most you want is water. you don't really have dry mouth like you typically would see, but also the detox symptoms are more intense.
I
So
bet.
when when I did my 13 days of water, I mean, there were days where it was rough. No big deal. You just mentally you just power through it. With
Yep.
dry fasting, there's like a hard stop point. You know what I'm saying? Like you're gonna get to a point. The one of the common detox symptoms with fasting is like lightheadedness or dizziness or whatever.
Yep.
That hit so heavy. Um, I really needed to rest. Like, there were times when it was just like you're just drained. You also, and I actually noticed this with water fasting too. You notice how powerful your voice is when you try to have a conversation with somebody after you've been dry fasting or water fasting for a long duration. And you see
Right.
how much energy it takes to talk. And I started to gain a massive respect for my voice. Like
Mm.
I've always been the type of person that didn't like to waste their breath. Like that, I'm that guy, but I don't like to waste my breath. But once I went through that fasting, I remember having a fairly colorful, I'll say, discussion with my brother's ex-girlfriend, and it really like drained me. I had to go like lay down after that, and I started to realize
Wow.
how powerful the vibrations from our body are, and when we
Mm.
talk, and like this idea that when you're passionate and you're talking, you're giving someone energy, like that's real,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, dry fasting was crazy. um and the other thing that I noticed with the dry fasting, dreams, like the dreams were more vivid. They were at the time I was kind of interested in, like, what do you call it, lucid dreaming. I was kind
Mhm.
of interested in that, and so
Yep.
my energy was kind of focused on that. And I had an experience where in my dream, like, I met this girl that I felt like I was like really connected to. And it was weird because I remember, like, I think I had to swim underwater. So it was like this underwater cave. And then you pop out and there's like this air pocket, and she was there and we had this conversation. And she specifically told me, like, you're not going to remember me when you wake up. And I said, I will never forget you. You know, it was like the most crazy dream, but I
Yeah.
never saw what she looked like. It was more of like her energy, kind of like
Yeah.
almost like a silhouette. So I don't know how she looks. I just know that, like, I'll never forget that dream. But yeah,
Yeah.
you just experience so much.
That's a fascinating point right there, though, is the how tapped in you get into like energy, spirit, source, whatever you want to call it, And I find that, on the longer fast that I do, that's the one thing that always stands out the most is, and I guess it actually comes back to that the chemical aspect of the imbalances that we put into our body. I had like a revelation in meditation one day where I didn't observe any thoughts that were like certain patterns of just like, oh, not just like hungry ones, but even just like aggression, things kind of like my own self judgments and insecurities, like in my earlier days in the fasting. When I noticed that those dropped, I was like, wait, you are what you eat really means something even more powerful, and like just noticing that all that karmic debt wasn't in the body and going through that transformation was really, really revealing just to, again, the subtleties of our energy, how much I'm giving people away in conversation, in action, how much stuff really just isn't worth my breath. Like that's one of those things that really resonated with me that I kept from the fast. But it's a powerful opportunity for people. And I don't know if you know him. It was one of the first things that kind of like got me into it on the spiritual side. It's this, I'm probably going to butcher his name, but it's Yogi Pradlad Johnny, I think. But he's this Indian yogi who apparently hasn't eaten since he was like 11 or like
Yeah.
8. And when he was under the medical supervision, they were watching him, and his bladder literally fills up and reabsorbs the urine. Doesn't drink water. He's just dry fasting all the time, living off prana, living off that vital forces all around. And when I saw that, that's what got me into dry fasting as well, is just understanding that, like, yo, our body can do amazing, miraculous things. Like, I love fasting in the winter because that's usually when I'm like the most ashy because I'm up in Seattle. So it's like Pacific Northwest. It's like it's that cold breeze.
Yeah.
And I always notice when I'm water fasting, no need for any lotion, nothing. And I actually stopped using a lot of lotions and things like that because I noticed that they were impacting my skin more. I'm sure you've experienced something like that.
Yes, dude. I had to cut out everything. Like if it's not homemade with natural ingredients and stuff, like I don't use it. I got so sensitive on my fast that I couldn't take showers because I could feel the chemicals in the water.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So it's you get really sensitive, and you touched on a really good point, right? Talking about the yogi, because you know, one of the things that I've read books and I've seen, you know, I think he's probably one of the best examples of dry fasting and long-term dry fasting. But a lot of people, they just don't believe it. They just assume that it's a lie. But when you understand what the body is capable of and how the body works, and you really see, okay, no, this is something that could really be done, then it's like, okay, we know he's not lying. And it's just like, well, can I do that? And what can I gain from doing it? Because a lot of people, they look at it like I'm missing out, I'm losing. And it's kind of like this idea that the more you let go of, the more you can gain. Yes, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, yeah,
facts. So I think we both have had this experience when you start fasting, okay, you're letting go of food. Then you start dry fasting, you're letting go of water. And the more you go down this rabbit hole, the more you actually gain. I will never change my experience. Like if I could change my history, my experiences, I would never do it. I've gained so much. Just a respect for my own body. When you mentioned the chemical constituents that make up these foods that we eat, how they literally become a part of us, you know, learning that we are energetic creatures. And when you eat, let's just say you eat a beef from a cow, right? The cow was born into bondage. We don't call it that. We call it a farm. And the probably stripped away from its mother because its mother's being raped and pumped for her milk. And so now there's trauma. And then we're taught at a young age that animals don't think and feel like we do. They have just instinct that's completely different. That's complete BS. So now you have all this trauma in the flesh of this animal. You're feeding it unnatural food. So you're not allowing an animal to eat what it's supposed to eat, which is what, like grass and plants and just herbs or whatever. You're giving it grain. You're giving it other animal particulates. You're giving it all this crap.
Even its own, forcing it to cannibalize,
forced to cannibalize. So now the animal gets extremely sick. Well, duh. So now you give it an antibiotic. So now you're poisoning it on top of the fact. So it builds up all of this toxicity in the flesh of the animal. Then you murder it in a humane way, right? By slitting its throat or hitting it in the back of the head with a bat or shooting it. People do all kinds of messed up stuff. And then you cut the meat up and you package it and you send it to the grocery store for us to consume. Now, we're energetic creatures. So we're not just eating the flesh of some animal. We're consuming all of the trauma, all of the energetic imbalance, all of the negativity, everything that was done to that animal. We are eating it. We're consuming it. And now we're wondering, well, why am I depressed? Why am I
so sad?
Why am I so sad? Why am I got all these highs and lows? And you are what you eat.
Yeah. And it's interesting when the thought forms dropped away. That was probably one of the most profound things, was noticing the shifts of that roller coaster of emotion was just gone. And the only thing that I came back to was the food. And then, you know, I do want to get into this with you because I found that the most important thing for me, obviously, and I always like to push this to people, is it's how you break your fast and what you eat after your fast. And that's one of the things that was the most profound is I can't even go back. Like, even if I wanted to eat certain foods, I just know that they would just destroy my body.
Right. Straight up. Yeah. So, well, let me just say this first. When you look at fasting, I always package prep, the actual fast, and the refeed. That's all fasting. If you're not looking at all of them together as a package, you're not doing it properly. And that's super important. So the refeed is when you hear stories about people harming themselves with fasting, that's usually the actual refeed, not the fast itself. It's like I was fasting for X amount of days, then I went to a Chinese buffet, and now I'm in surgery. You know what I'm saying? And so for the first time, you get to see, like after a fast, for the first time, you get to see how toxic, how poisonous, and how detrimental the foods you eat are. There's a guy on YouTube. I think his name's called Vegetable Police. He's a really eccentric guy. And he was doing some really long-term fasting. I don't know if it was 21 days or 30 days or maybe even more. He's just a wild guy. Very interesting. And he broke his fast with like 3 eggs, like just egg. He didn't cook it or anything. And I don't know, maybe something else. And he ended up in the hospital. Something was about to rupture. I can't remember. His appendix or something like that was about to rupture. And I said to myself, now I don't know his whole story. I think he had some surgeries and some things going on. But I said to myself, it wasn't a fast. It was those freaking eggs you ate. And it just so happens that the way that your body reacted to it was in that manner, was more extreme. And he ended up not getting the surgery because the doctor was like, yo, we got to take your appendix out. He's like, nah, I'm good. I mean, he's fine. But it was the food that he ate. And it just had such a violent reaction in the system for whatever reason. So the goal is whenever you break your fast, you want to make sure the food is as easily digestible as possible. That's the key. And the most easy thing to eat is something with a lot of water content. So one thing I ask people all the time, and I'll ask you, because I've asked this 100 times. You're in the jungle, you're naked, you don't have any tools, you don't have fire, you don't have any resources outside of your hands, and just your own strength. You have a pig in front of you, you have a bush of kale, and you have a mango. Which one do you go for?
I'm going for that mango.
All day long. It's the easiest, right? Now, why is that? We're supposed to be carnivores, right? We're supposed to be eating meat. So why don't you take your teeth and bite into the hide of that pig? Well, kale is nutrient dense. It's supposed to be the superfood. Like, why don't you go for the kale? You're automatically drawn to what is the best for you, right? The mango, it's vibrant, it's colorful, it's sweet. It has hydration. It's juicy, right? It's prepackaged. It's ready to go. You don't have to salt it. You don't have to season it. You don't have to cook it. It's 100% ready to go. And that's how simple it is. Nature is so simple. You think about the breast milk of a healthy mother, it's sweet, which means that we are designed to be attracted to and consume sweet things, but it needs to be naturally sweet. And that's how they get us with the food, because they put the artificial sugar in everything, right?
No, it's facts though. I think that's the funniest stuff is, anytime I'm fasting, I mean, it's even now, like the things that I crave more than anything else is fruit. And I found that it's that energetic aspect to it. It's the karmic gift that is fruit itself. When you look at it just from the energetic component, it's like, it's literally nature's gift. It's like the one thing, like you think about kale, for example, you think about any type of like leafy vegetable, you have to harm the plant to actually eat that. So there's like so many different layers to it where it's like the fruit is literally just like I made this for you, like enjoy. And you're like, yo, yes, I'm mouthwatered. Like when our strawberries are ripe out here, like I could smell a strawberry from like 3 blocks. Wow. I think that's just the one thing is, I was drawn naturally to fruit as the main thing. And I'm pretty much like, I don't know, people like to call everything with labels like fruitarian. Like, yeah, most of my diet is fruit now, like seeds and nuts, fruit, nothing really too crazy. I love some sourdough bread because I make it, but like, but it's one of those things that even that with like the probiotic natural fermentation aspect, like I've noticed that certain things are just so detrimental for the body unless it's that natural method. And what you touched on was really important with the artificial sugars,
Mm,
because again, that stuff just hijacks the brain. It's treated a lot like, it processes a lot like cocaine. Fructose doesn't do that. That's
right.
the most wild thing that I've seen is, you look at in the 70s, they've known that it's the artificial sugars, the corn syrups, that is the most detrimental thing for human health. And when that system's hijacked by artificial ingredients, by different, like the diets, the fake sugars, that's sending your body the trigger that you're getting sugar and you're never getting it. Like, people are destroying their bodies and they don't even realize, like, how crazy a soda is.
Oh,
Like, like I literally can't even like, it's not even palatable for me anymore to like have a lot of these processed foods, because you can taste it, you can feel it. It sits in your gut for how long, and like,
stimulates you. Yeah. I actually, well, you made me remember. So when I very first started my fasting journey, I also coupled it with like 5 months of alkaline eating, because
mm,
like I'm just like, yo, I'm all in. Let's do it. So I'm fasting regularly. I'm eating alkaline, and I'm talking strict. No cheat days. None of that. This is what
wow.
I'm eating now. That did a couple really important things for me. Number one, it allowed me to test, was what I was experiencing truly dietary, and that was
Mm,
important for me. The other thing too, it taught me how to cook for the first time. Like, I could prepare a meal before, and I thought I could cook, but I until you start messing with some mushrooms and marinating herbs and get, smoked paprika, and what is that? And you know what I mean? Until you start messing with that, you're not really cooking. And so I learned how to truly cook. So, because
mm,
like having to go out and get food from somewhere else, as far as like vegan or vegetarian or whatever, it's a challenge. You really can't get good stuff. But
yeah.
after that time, I decided to have a candy bar. My favorite candy bar is a zero bar. This is something I ate when I was a child, and I had bought a case of them because they're really hard to find. So I just bought a
Mm,
case, and I'd have one, once a month or whatever. That was just my thing.
yeah.
Well, I go to have a zero bar, and within probably 30 seconds, 60 seconds, I could feel it stimulating me. Like, I could literally feel it in my veins. You know how quickly the blood,
Wow.
circulates the body. I could feel it stimulating me, almost like if I drank like, some coffee or something, like
Yeah.
jittery. And I said, "Oh my God." You know what I'm saying? Like, and it was beautiful because the journey that I had gone through up until that point allowed me the vision, or the perception. I was able to understand what was happening, and it wasn't just
Mm,
a zero bar anymore. It was
yeah.
a chemical cocktail that was stimulating my body, and
Yeah.
I never had one since. Like, I had a Hostess cupcake like 2-3 years ago for the first time in a decade or more. I don't know. I never
Right.
really ate them. And I just had one. And like you said, I could taste the chemicals in it. I was like, this is trifling. You know, it's like, how did we ever like this stuff? But when you fast, one of the benefits we didn't talk about yet was it cleans the palate. It
Yeah.
restores your taste buds. You know, I think on a
Yeah.
video recently, I was talking about this. Like, how often do you get like your taste buds are all sore and, swollen and stuff? Like, how often does that happen? And I'm like, yo, that's not supposed to happen. That, like, your taste buds aren't just supposed. I was on YouTube, and people's taste buds get so swollen and stuff sometimes. They got all these weird techniques. Like, if you just go on YouTube and you look for techniques for removing swollen taste buds, it's all these techniques and strategies. And I'm like, wow, my taste buds haven't been swollen in years, but it used
Right.
to happen all the time
Yeah,
before.
the sea salt and vinegar, like we have Tim's out here, those like kettle potato chips.
Yeah.
Every time, it's
Yeah.
one of those ones where it's just everything is so hyper reactive. Again, it's just throwing off the natural chemistry of the body, and I find that we normalize it. And like you touched on a point that's really important, is this kind of the bodily reset that happens. Is everything changes? It's like I found that, because I have more of a biology science background, and I was doing a lot of different like research studies on this stuff, and I found that one of the things with obesity is people's biological mechanism to actually burn fat isn't on. It just gets shut down. It gets circumnavigated because they're just in such a crazy caloric intake that their body's just like, oh, well, we're just going to keep taking it in, I guess. And when you water fast, like they've found that resets completely, like 100%. So not only do the taste buds switch, your body becomes more efficient at burning fat. Like I'm really fascinated with the different irritations and like fungus aspects too, because all the systems for healing just reset. Inflammation just drops. Your body goes into that conservation mode where it's like, I don't have time for that. Get out.
Yeah, the systems, well, I look at it like this. I do my best to simplify this stuff. Let's just say we are a battery pack, right? And every morning you wake up with 100% charge. Well, the first thing you do, or at least we should have 100% charge. Most of us don't. But the first thing you do is you put something in your mouth. It's the first thing we do in the morning. It's called breakfast. So instantly you take that reserve, let's just say it's 100, and you reduce it down to 60%. Just boom. We start the day, we're at 60%. People don't understand how much energy it takes to digest food.
Right.
And actually, one of the best ways that you can kind of comprehend how much energy it takes is by fasting. Because then when you start fasting, then you get what people call the fasting insomnia, where, you have so much, you have a surplus of energy, so you can't sleep at night. I'm sure you've experienced it. Like, when I was fasting, 4 hours was about the most sleep that I could get. And what I found was I was able to get more hours in my day. So people are constantly complaining, we only got 24 hours in a day. Well, how is it that person A can get X amount of work done in their 24 hours, but you can only get, half as much done? And it's all about managing time management. Well, if you have an additional 2 hours or even 4 hours, if you sleep 8 hours, imagine 4 hours a day. That's an enormous amount of extra time you have to get things done, to spend time with your family or whatever the case may be.
And it's even better because then you don't have to worry about people at night. You get that quiet, calm stillness of the morning and the nighttime just to get a lot of shit done.
You get a lot of stuff done. Super, super efficient. So, the chemistry of the body and the systems, we have to respect them and we need to understand them. So, one of the things that I did was I started these liver and gallbladder flushes. And there was a period of time, I think I did them for like 6 months. And essentially it's designed to cleanse the liver out, right? Because our liver, it's like these little pathways, and our liver looks like a spider web, just all these little pathways. Bile flows through it, but they get gunked up. It gets gunked up with all the plaque and all the mucus and all the crap that we eat. And over time, it becomes inefficient. When the bile isn't efficiently flowing, you have all kinds of issues, especially digestive issues, right? Your body doesn't digest well. So I'm doing these liver and gallbladder flushes. The other thing it does is it helps to remove gallstones if you have gallstones collecting, which is supposed to be impossible without surgery. But you become very sensitive. So the actual flush itself is literally like almost performing like a light surgery on the body. And I was actually like, well, let me challenge this. Let me see. I like to challenge things. I like to test things. So after doing this flush for maybe like the 4th or 5th time, I was like, you know what? I have an audience. I know these people are going to, drink, and they're going to eat poorly. They're going to make bad decisions, right? So let me put myself in a position where, I can experience that. So I said, I'm going to have some wine. I'm going to have a glass of wine after I do my flush. So my flushes last, it's like a week process. It's 6 days. And then on 7th day, I rest. And I just usually kind of fast. But this time I decided to have a glass of wine. Man, the next day I was peeing blood.
Holy shit. What?
It wasn't just, like my color. It was like a little color, like it was a little trickle. I was peeing blood. It was there was so much blood in my urine. I thought it was wine. I was just like, am I like peeing wine? Because I know I had wine. Is it some way that the wine just flowed right through my? No, I was peeing blood, and it scared the crap out of me.
Whoa.
Yeah, but I didn't freak out. I didn't freak out because I knew that I had done this to myself.
Yeah.
The other thing that I noticed within probably 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes of drinking the wine, I could feel my liver. For the first time in my life, I was able to feel my liver. And so when you talk about how hard the liver works, oh my God, it was working overtime, but I could feel it. I wasn't numb to it. It wasn't covered in mucus and sludge. And my body was sending me very clear signals. And it was just like, yo, what are you doing? So between the pain that my liver was experiencing and seeing the blood, and the next day, I knew exactly what I had done. And for the first time, I saw how damaging wine was. I saw how damaging alcohol was to the system. Because you could get that fatty liver disease or whatever from drinking, but you can also get it from, just poor eating. It's really about like the liver is dying. And we got to learn how to like listen to our bodies in the sense that when it's sending us a very clear signal, we need to know what that signal means and how it's affecting us. And maybe how can we support the body, or, like if you go into a room that's really, really dusty, your nostrils close up. Yeah. Your breathing gets shallow, right? So you got a choice. You can ignore it and be like, man, my allergies are messed up, or you could be like, whoa, the air in here is really toxic. Maybe I should get out of here. Yeah. Your body's sending you a signal, Oh,
yeah.
So.
And that's the thing right there, though, is that water fasting, whatever you're doing in terms of these flushes, it offers you that opportunity to reset those signals, reset those pathways. And that was probably one of the most fascinating things for me in like my first experiences early on. Was I didn't realize that all these times that I've been feeling hungry was really just my thirst trigger, and then I started looking into it. I was like, oh my gosh, it's like the same pathway that it's just been hijacked. What else am I missing out on? And that's when I started to look at the subtleties of like, what foods do I eat, or like what habits have I been doing, like especially when I was like drinking back then, that I would feel bloated in the morning, that I would like visibly feel inflamed, that I would get weird skin irritations. Like I started to pick up more on that. And that's one of the things where it comes back to the sense of how just corrupt the Western medicine and medical field is. Like, yeah, surgeries and things like that, resetting bones, that stuff's pretty dope. That's modern medicine. But in terms of truly healing the body, it's like we were born with everything we need to heal. That's the most fascinating stuff, is like, so I'm curious, I think one of the things that got me sold on water fast was when I had my first like bowel movements, and like after those first detoxes, and I got rid of some stuff in my system. I was like, I haven't eaten that in like a month. What? Like that was one of the eye-opening things where I was like, oh, I literally have like rotten shit in me. Like what? This is real?
Yeah. There's a statistic that says that the average American has anywhere from 10 to 20 pounds of just feces in just sitting in you. Now, that sounds fantastical. Nah, there's no way there's 20 pounds of literal feces in my system. Yeah, there is. Have you ever considered why you stink? Like, has anybody ever stopped to be like, man, why do I stink? Well, I know something else that stinks that has trash in it. It's called a trash can, a dumpster. And so we're treating our bodies like dumpsters. We've got all of this excess fecal matter and all of this crazy crap in our system. And, so one of the things that I noticed when I did one of my first fasts, I decided to take some herbs with it to help to detox and flush the system. And I remember I was sitting on the toilet, and I was probably, 10 or more days into my fast at this point. And I was having a bowel movement, and it was a big one. And, that always kind of throws you through a loop, because you're like, how am I having a bowel movement? I ain't ate for 10 days. And so it felt like just a big bowel. And I like to look. I want to know because I'm
Yeah,
learning.
like, yeah, what's going on down there?
Yeah, like what's going on? It was this long string of mucus. It was literally like a mucus snake. Maybe people call it mucoid plaque. And attached to it was old fecal matter.
Yeah.
So it was like this really weird looking bowel movement. And that made me realize, like, and I had that, I had already started this process of eating, and like I had already started doing all these things. And I'm like, wow, so it's like people, one of the mistakes I see people make a lot when they learn about healthy eating, right? They watch one of those Cowspiracy or Forks Over Knives. They watch one of them documentaries that motivates them, and they're like, "All right, boom, I'm gonna start doing vegetarian, or I'm gonna start doing vegan." Okay, cool. I liken it to a house. Let's say that you have a house that you've had for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, whatever, however old you are, and in those 40 years, 20 years, 30 years, you've been trashing the house. You get mad. You punch a hole in the wall. You clog up the plumbing system, right? And then all of a sudden one day you're like, man, this is my house. I got to take care of this thing. And you stop. You stop punching holes in the wall. You stop throwing beer cans on the floor, but you never clean up the mess you made for the past 20 years. And that's, to me, what detoxing is. It's like, okay, you're eating healthy now. Great. But did you ever stop to clean up all the crap and all the mess you made? Most people don't. So now you have all these people on these health journeys who are missing the most fundamental practice. You got to patch the wall. There's a hole in the wall, And that process is super, super important. And so, you see a lot of crazy stuff, man. I've had people send me pictures of parasites that look like, the Loch Ness monster come out of them. Like, seriously. Things that look like they got eyes, like they're big enough to I could visually see the eyes on this thing come out of people.
That's wild.
Oh, it's crazy.
That's wild.
You talk about bloating. One of the things, so you mentioned that, how sugar can hijack your neural pathways and just it can do all kinds of weird stuff. Well, parasites can too, right? Parasites have the ability to release neurotoxins, and they're literally, it's like kind of controlling you. It's like it's causing you to have desires and cravings and things of that nature. So it's a whole, you really got to look at this holistically. I've seen surgeries. This is disgusting. How people have these crazy guts.
Yeah.
I've seen surgeries where people have had their stomachs open, their intestines open, or whatever, and they have pulled worms out of people's gut, out of their system. Just, it's like spaghetti. Like if you had a pot of spaghetti, I've seen them just pull pounds of worms out of people's system. You wonder why you can't get rid of that gut. You have literally pounds of creatures living. And it's not even just that they're in there. They have a whole anus. So they're eating and they're pooping. So now their crap is mixing with your crap. And so why do you stink? Because you got a whole cesspool going on. So what I noticed was the cleaner I got, the less I stunk. And I actually, you notice that too?
Yeah.
I did a video, and I know people are in the comment section. They're like, Chris, you on some BS. Like you're lying. But I did a video where I talked about how I don't wear deodorant anymore.
Yes, facts. I don't think I'm crazy.
I don't need it. But you know what? And this is what I love about nature. Nature's always going to prove. It's always going to prove what it is that you're experiencing. You look at a baby human. Most people are familiar with that sweet baby smell. It's like this weird baby smell that we all love. Okay, so we understand that babies don't stink. They actually smell sweet. Babies don't wear deodorant. Babies' breath don't stink. Like babies' poop don't stink. Like it just smells like warm breast milk. Everything about a baby, even its excretions, are to a degree kind of pleasing. Like it doesn't really bother you too much, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about healthy babies. You could obviously give a baby a whole bunch of crap and make them, but it's like, why all of a sudden at the age of, 5 or 6, do we need to start wearing deodorant? And, why do our breath start stinking? Like, I understand keeping the teeth clean, but why did your breath stink? Why do you have morning breath and things of that nature? And it all goes back to the maintenance and the care of the body. If your body's a cesspool, you're going to smell like that. You get healthy, your eyes brighten up. I don't have morning breath anymore. I just thought that was a thing. I thought it was you supposed to have it. But babies don't have morning breath. Have an infant baby talk to you, goo goo gaga in your face in the morning. Smells perfectly fine.
It's so true though, yo. Like, people think that you're always on this like woo-woo crazy trip when you talk about that stuff. But it's like, I literally haven't worn deodorant in like 3 years. Like, pretty much since I started doing intermittent fasting, water fasting, and all that. And with that, I just want to say again, Chris, thank you so much for joining us, and the founder of AHA. It's been real. Listeners, don't forget to tap into the after show. And again, thanks for watching Creatives Chat. Roll the outro.
That concludes this episode of Creatives Chat. Thank you for watching. Join us every Thursday at 3:33 p.m. Pacific Daily Time as creative minds get together and chat about who knows what. View more episodes on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks again to our sponsors for making this show possible. Thank you, We Are Historically, for your conscious human apparel. Shop online at wearehistorically.com.
Hi, I'm Darius Wilrich. I'll teach you everything you need to know about playing jazz piano like a pro with my 12-week online video course and downloadable guidebook, Jazz Piano Pro Essentials. Enroll today at jazzpianopro.com.
Thank you for joining us. Have a happy always.